Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim Rochelle. Today's episode 252, and we're going to be interviewing Joel. How you doing, Joel?
Not bad, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to do this. How about you?
Me as well. I agree.
All right, let's do this. So, first question, like I told you before, that I ask everybody is let's start with your childhood growing up.
Okay, yeah. I was born in 1983 in June in a small town here in Canada, Alberta, called Medicine Hat. I was the only child growing up until I turned 3.5, and then my parents had my younger sister, my only other sibling, who's still very close to me this day. Obviously, 39 years later, me and her have a good relationship, but I was kind of jealous of her when she came in the picture. And I think that's where my uh, desire to be first and foremost and the most important and everything, right? Like, started getting like insecurities at a young age. But growing up, my childhood was pretty good. Always had the food on the table, clothes on my back. I was enrolled in all the sports that I wanted to play. I grew up playing competitive hockey and football, basketball as I went into high school. Home life was good. There wasn't too much chaos or dysfunctionality. Um, there was some drinking and stuff in the household, but nothing extreme, nothing like that. There was no abuse and everything. I had a good childhood.
That's good. So, when you say there was drinking in the house, were people drinking to get drunk, or was it just like a special occasion or a glass of wine at dinner?
Just like, yeah, special occasions, holidays and stuff like that. Parents entertaining friends, right? It wasn't never
Seems
like,
normal.
yeah, like no continuous drinking every day throughout the house or anything like that with either of my parents. But
So, nothing like that really affected you, obviously.
no,
How was your life as far as, school and your social life?
school was great. Social life was great, right? Like I said, sports came pretty naturally to me. So I had all the friends all the time with whatever sports team I was on. I was always popular. Grades were good. Never had any problems academically or struggling. Half the time it seemed like I never had to study for exams. I just naturally obtained all the information that I needed to in school and got it and got good grades. And pretty much that was the rule in the house. As long as I was, excelling in my sports and getting good grades, and pretty much I slid under my parents' radar, and I was free to hang out with my friends or do whatever as long as I was home by curfew, stuff like that. Right? It's still rules. I wasn't really allowed to just roam freely, come and go as I pleased. But as long as certain things were met, then I got to do what I wanted. So lots of friends, lots of free time, but mostly a lot of my time was taken up playing sports. So, which was kept me out of trouble growing up as a kid, everything like that too, which was a good thing.
Yeah, that is a good thing about recreational sports and things like that. It does keep you out of trouble.
Yep.
That's why they have all those programs in the inner cities trying to get kids involved in those types of programs, get them off the
Yeah,
streets and get a coach for them, things like that.
for sure. Yeah, I think that's like a good thing, right? So, plus
Yeah.
keeps electronics nowadays. It seems like every kid's got a almost a better cell phone than I do sometimes, right? But
So, did you have a lot of friends growing up?
yeah, I was popular. I look back now though, I think like I was in the jock class, I guess, right? Like, and it was probably I was kind of a bully and stuff like that, right? With all my friends and everything. Obviously, some things I regret how I treated other people probably growing up, but I can't go back and change the past. But at that time, that's who we were. We hung with our like-minded group of friends, and yeah, so which is it's completely different now, right? I look back and I had like so many friends that I didn't have enough time to hang out or play with them all growing up, and then now as an adult, it's like I've come to a point where it seems like I have hardly any friends and just a bunch more time to myself, right? So, which is it's the way I like it nowadays, but it wasn't the case when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, time to yourself could be important. I'm one of those people. I need time to myself also.
Oh yeah,
Don't get me wrong, I like hanging out with people, but at the end of the night, I do need my own personal time before I go to bed, especially.
for sure.
So what was your first exposure to drugs or alcohol or whatever the addiction might be when you were young or whatever age it was? What was your first exposure as far as someone like, I'm going to strictly get high? Because you said your parents, they weren't drinking to get messed up. They were drinking just socially and things like that. So when was the
Yeah.
first time you encountered someone that was doing it just to get messed up?
So I'd say it was probably about grade 10. Me and a bunch of my friends, we decided we were gonna drink one weekend, and obviously we couldn't buy the booze ourselves, so we had to get someone to boot for us, and we ended up picking up a couple 2 liter coolers and a big straw for Max, and proceeded to just drink it as fast as we could. And I just remember like the initial euphoria, the way it made me feel. I felt like untouchable and like could take on the world, and uh, felt great until I got sick, right? But that obviously that first initial feeling of how good I felt, unstoppable, everything like that. That's what like implanted in my brain, and I remembered that, right? Like I didn't remember how bad the getting sick part was, but I remembered how great it felt as the booze started taking over my inhibitions and everything and making me feel good, right? So it wasn't long before I was thinking about that feeling and doing that again every weekend, right? Where it would start out maybe a couple weekends in between that first one, but then pretty soon, come grade 11, grade 12, I was already planning my weekend partying with the crew. Like Monday after we returned to school and started talking about the prior weekend's events, right? So already making plans. So like it wasn't long before like I was a blackout drunk in my senior year of high school. But like I said, I had already, because my grades were so good, I had set myself up to a lightened schedule that I hardly had any classes my senior year. So I was in a good position. So it was more focused on partying, and because I knew I was already going to graduate. So, but yeah, I was already blacking out drunk, uh, causing problems, getting in lots of fights and stuff like that. So, and then obviously, I was smoking marijuana in high school too daily, but it didn't affect my grades, didn't cause any issues at that point, right? So I just rolled with it, and yeah.
What kind of things were you getting into fights over?
Oh, just whatever, anything, just the alcohol like would kick in and someone would say something that I didn't agree with or whatever. Or when I was old enough, started going to the bars at 18, frequenting those at least 3 times a week, just people from other schools or just anything, right? Like who knows what, probably got in fights for things that were just way out of proportion and whatnot. But obviously, alcohol making me feel like I was Rocky Balboa or whatever at that time, right? So just so many fights that I don't even remember why. But
So it was a pretty quick progression for you as far as from the first time you used to going and just drinking, blacking out. I
yeah,
mean, was that about 2 year period? That's when you got started blacking out.
yeah. So
Because you
pretty,
drank 10th grade and then you started blacking out 12th.
yeah.
Did a lot of your friends drink as much as you did?
Yeah, we would all just throw in the money and pick up whatever we could get, right? Share it and stuff like that. And probably that probably contributed to like getting as drunk as we did, because everyone would think they need to take a bigger share or drink more than the other person, right? Or get more of it in them. So probably didn't contribute to well to how quickly we got drunk, right? It seemed like it was a race to see who could drink as much and everything like that, right? And then probably that's why as I kept drinking down the line, I just figured that was the way to go, right? Drinking as fast as I could or stuff like that. So
You guys were all drinking equally.
yeah.
Did any of your other friends that drink with you end up having addiction issues also?
Well, I couldn't tell because shortly after high school, kind of had like a falling out with all those guys I grew up with in high school, and I ventured down a different path. I decided to just pick up and leave my hometown, and I actually, I did a year of college first and decided that wasn't the route for me to go because the party and had me skipping school and pursuing other things that I thought were more important to me at that time. So I had a falling out with all them, and then I just decided to hitchhike out of my hometown, and I hit the streets. I hit the streets of Calgary, which is about 2.5 hours away from where I grew up. I was there for a bit, and then I decided to hitchhike out to Vancouver, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with Vancouver, Canada, down there, but it's like pretty much like the Skid Row of Canada, right? It's just a horrible place. So I
Yeah,
was out.
I've heard Dr. Gabor Mate speak about it a lot.
Yeah, it's a pretty dark place, pretty sad place, but it's so I was out there for a while, and that's pretty much where the hard drugs. So I started doing hard drugs and got caught up in that lifestyle. So
What made you land on Skid Row? You didn't want any better for yourself?
I just like I pretty much uh got accustomed to like having no responsibility in my life, right? Not having to be accountable for anything or like that, right? Just kind of come and go, no bills to pay, pretty much just getting free handouts, free food, stuff like that. It was just, yeah, I don't
So
know.
you were homeless for a while.
Yeah, I was homeless for a pretty good chunk of well, pretty much all my 20s was homeless, and uh, all the way probably from around 2002 to 2015. At least 80% of those years were all homeless.
So what's like a day in the life of a homeless person?
Well, I don't know, it depends. Like, well, how long you've been up for, or how long you've been partying for, right? Like, yeah, eventually find somewhere to bunker down and sleep off the last bender you've been on, or get up in the morning at a shelter, head out, and either you've already secured your fix for that day, or that's pretty much the first thing you're on your mind, right? Is how you're going to go about getting money to hit the liquor store or go meet a dealer or whatever you got, right? So, and then from there is just pretty much tie up your shoes tight and get to hoofing along, see what that leads you on, like what adventures that day's going to bring to you, right? So, yeah, just pretty much, yeah, just go with the flow is what it was, right? Like, just secure the bag and see what adventures go on.
Were you ever scared?
Oh, there's many times in my life I've been in situations where I was fearful, right? But obviously, God, who I believe in, had knew better plans for me and kept me out of trouble and
What
whatnot.
kind of
But
things happened?
no, I've had like weapons pulled against me and like seen people really messed up and like almost like I situations where I don't know if the people died but just left before found out and never heard anything about it before, right? Or just lots of friends overdosing and losing them, stuff like that, right? But at that point, there was nothing I ever really. That's something I was never fearful about or took into consideration was overdosing myself, right? Like I figured I was just untouchable, or it wouldn't happen to me. But there's always that next time, right? So you never know.
It's amazing the things we do when we're in the throes of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So you were homeless for about 14 years.
Off and
You were
on.
doing off and on. You said 80% of that. What were you doing so those 20%, where were you at those 20% of times when you were not homeless?
Well, I would like get myself into a treatment center, uh, clean up for a bit, start doing okay, get myself my own place, set up decently, and then something I would just relapse and not, or yeah, go back to using or drinking, and then fault on my rent, not pay it, whatnot, right? And then it was just a matter of time before I was evicted and back out on the streets and whatnot, right? So pretty much a cycle. Like all through those years, it was, I would party for a while, then I would get myself into a treatment center, and I'd get the 30 days, and then relapse, and I'd use for a year, whatnot, then decide it was time to go back to treatment. And then I would get like 60 days, or like every time I went to treatment, I would just get a little bit more clean time, right? But then it would relapse and the using would be just right where I left off from it, right? Just as hard and just as dependent quicker. So and that was pretty much the cycle in and out of treatment centers and homeless till 2015 when like I made a decision to enter like a year-long treatment center for just all men, not co-ed, and just take a year to just strictly focus and kind of get some routine back in my life. So
What made you decide to take that the route going that 1 year treatment?
just the fact that like I knew that I've gone to all these other treatment centers that were like 19 days or a month or whatever, right? And it wasn't like enough time. It was pretty much like time to put on a few pounds, but not tackle any of those like issues, the underlying issues of like mental health or home life or whatever else, right? That I hadn't tackled in those short stints in treatment. Whereas the year long one, like it was dead, like it would be like every week would be a different topic, and group counseling and individual counseling that I could open up more with the counselor one on one and talk about some of these things that were actually on my plate that I didn't want to share with the group or whatever, right? So it was just more structured. There was chores just to help build like accountability and structure in my life again, right? So I
So
figured like I put so many years into like using, and why not take a year and actually just focus on myself and put in some work.
that's a long time, a year program.
Yeah.
How'd you find it? Like, where do you find these programs?
Well, up here in Canada, it's pretty like I know it's a lot different up here than it is down there. There,
Oh, that's right. You have socialized medicine.
yeah, like we have like I would go to these treatment centers and I wouldn't have to pay anything out of pocket. Like
Take a guess what the average is in New Jersey. Well, I live in New Jersey. Do you want to know what the average is?
for what, like a month-long treatment center?
Yeah,
Well,
let's say for a month.
my guess would be like probably 11 grand or something.
More like 30.
30 grand.
Yeah, I remember when I first started calling rehabs, this one guy, he was willing to fly me out to California to his rehab, but it was $1,000 a day or 1,100. I was like, I can't afford that. And you want me to
That's
go for 30 days? That's insane. But
that
I got
is
lucky and I had a DUI. So New Jersey had some program that if you had a DUI, they would send you to rehab.
nice.
So I got
That's
lucky and went for free. I got real
nice.
lucky.
Oh, for sure. 30 grand isn't like that's a year wages for some people almost like
I know.
yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a shame, right? Like so up here is we're pretty lucky up here with our healthcare system and everything like that, right? So I would go in there, it would be all taken care of, like my room and board, everything, my food. We'd get 3 meals a day, and then I would get like a check each month for I think it was like $250, right? Not obviously enough to live lavishly or anything, but supply me my cigarettes until I started vaping or
Why did you get the 250? The government pays you to go to rehab?
well, they pay for you like your cost of you being in there, so they pay the center and everything, right? And then yeah, they would give us like money for incidentals, like for say like a bus pass, in case we needed to
No,
go
but
to
you said you got 250 a month. Where did that come from?
the government.
That's pretty cool. So they give you money for like
Yeah,
essentials and things like that. That's wow.
yeah,
For us Americans to hear something like that,
uh,
it's comical and unbelievable. It's like, oh, stop it. I wish it
yeah,
was like that, but it
uh,
is like that in some places. It's amazing.
yeah. It's for sure. There's like a lot of people up here too get like assisted living, like the people with disabilities and they can't do life on their own. Like the government has some. Well, every government obviously will have some positive and some negative aspects to it, right? That you could sit on the fence about, but it's a pretty good system up here. Well, in Alberta at least. I haven't been to treatment in any other provinces in my country, but Alberta is pretty good when it comes to addiction services. So I know I needed it. That year long was what actually kind of got the ball rolling with me, and made me put in actually doing some step work because that was a requisite of the program. You had to like go to get home groups and do the meetings and a certain amount of meetings every week you had to attend, and they kept track of it all, right? So, and chores in the house, right, too. So it wasn't just like a free for all, come and go as you please, do what you want, right? It was curfews, and you couldn't leave on weekends without passes and stuff like that. So it was structured how I needed it at that time, right? So
That's good. And it's great that the government up there takes care of you guys like that.
yeah,
So what
but
happened after you left rehab? No, what were you gonna say?
oh, like, but it also too is like I was gonna say, like it's good for like people that like want to actually do that and change their lives. But there's a lot of abusing of that of people too that will go to these centers with no intentions of actually changing their lives, right? They just want to go there for a place for the winter to get off the streets and whatnot, or place to eat and stuff like that too, right? So it's kind of like hard for the people that actually want to get in but can't get in sometimes. And it's like it's can be a process to get in, a waiting period too, which is kind of hard too, because you think about how many people when they want to get in there have probably maybe died from an overdose waiting to get in there, but they can't get in, right? Because other people that don't want to be there, or that actually don't want to be there for the right reasons, are there taking up a bed too, right? So it's kind of a gray area, but yeah, so it is. We got a good system up here, and there's changed a lot of people's lives, but there's always room for improvement, I guess.
Well, of course, nothing's perfect.
No.
So once you got out of the year rehab, what'd you do?
So yeah, they while I was in there, they helped me set up housing. Right, I had uh, worker, I guess, like a social worker kind of that, took me around to some different places to look at apartments, and I chose the one that I wanted to call my home, and then they set me up in it. They paid my first 3 months rent there. They furnished it. They covered my first 3 months of my cable bill, my utilities. I kept it was going good for a while. Like at this point, I had already had over my first year clean time, right? Like the longest amount of clean time I had, and I was doing all right. I was still going to meetings here and there. I had my sponsor and everything like that, but then I was out on my own. I didn't have things to be accountable for, or structure, because I didn't have to work yet, right? Because they gave me the 3 months to find employment, right? So I was sitting around idle, and then slowly my meetings frequency decreased, and I kind of isolated. I reconnected with some of the guys that I had been friends with in the house that had left the house and I knew were back out using. I was just treading on thin ice, slippery slopes, and I think it was probably within the 2 months of being out on my own, I decided to start using again. And because I obviously wasn't paying bills still, because they were taking care of everything. It was I just partied hard, and my place kind of became like a hot spot, and I was in like partying there, everything like that. And luckily though, like I nipped it in the bud before it got too bad. I didn't get evicted. I stopped again. I found a job, got back on board. So I only used for a couple months. Stopped, got back on board, like I said, and then after that, then I actually stayed clean for 3.5 years. I didn't lose that apartment. I met a girl who was in an all-female treatment center, and we started a relationship. She moved in with me. Things were good. We were both working programs, doing all right, and eventually that just kind of fizzled out, and we had to part ways. She started using pills, and I had to ask her to move out and go on her own. And shortly after that, then I started using again, just under the 4 year mark.
What
And
were
then
you
that
using?
like I like it like my progression was from the alcohol to cocaine, the soft form, and then I went switched to the hard form. And then after one time cleaning up in Calgary, Alberta, where I was living, I went to treatment, and when I came back out, all my friends that I was rolling with had switched over to speed crystal meth because it was so much cheaper and accessible around the city that that's what everyone was doing. So that's what I hopped in to do, and that became my DOC. So at that point, I was using crystal meth, which is a horrible drug in my opinion, and but I guess they all are. But it was a horrible drug for me, and kind of took over my mind pretty bad. And yeah, so I was using that, and yeah, it was a horrible place. Got down to like 140 pounds, and was just not a healthy looking dude, or mentally, physically, spiritually, anything. Right. So started doing that, and yeah, unfortunately, I lost the place I was living in then, and um, yeah, ended up moving back in with that girl that I told to leave my place. And but my mind state was really in a dark place. So it took me a while to get out of that mentally and come back clear headed and positive outlook on life, right? But
So you mentioned before you're 110 days clean, right?
now I am, yeah. So I was so after I gotten a new job, like I'm a carpenter. So I got a new job with the company. I was working at the university up in Edmonton, where I had gone to that treatment center and decided to keep living in Edmonton from Calgary, and was working there. And then they sent me down to Red Deer, where I live now, which is where pretty much my mom, my dad, my sister, my niece, they all lived already. So it was really convenient. So they were sending me down here to build a new courthouse. So I moved down here. This was in December of 2020. And, I stayed with my mom for a bit, just till I got back on my feet down here, found my own place, building this courthouse, and was doing good. Was obviously not using or drinking while I was living with my mom, because she knows she's been supportive all throughout my addictive career, I guess, right? So she pretty much said she wouldn't put up with that stuff. So obviously I respected her and didn't use there, but eventually moved out, got my own place, still doing good. And but then eventually working with the fellas, and tempted to go out for drinks after work or on a Friday for the weekend. Started kind of drinking again here and there, right? It wasn't the binge drinking, pardon me, that I used to do all the time, but the progression was there, right? Like I would go out for a couple of drinks on a Friday, and then maybe a couple more Saturday, and then slowly almost got to almost every weekend again. And then of course desire for the drugs crept in there too. So yeah, I started casually using those. It didn't get to the as bad as it was. Like I wasn't a daily user for that or anything like that, right? But fast forward to this last Christmas, I had been working up in Northwest Territories, which is way up north in Canada. Wasn't the place for me. Just like isolated, away from my family, away from my girlfriend at the time, and yeah, I just wasn't didn't have the support, or wasn't reaching out, wasn't talking about the issues that were bugging me, and I just started. I was drinking up there. Uh, Ended up getting thrown in a drunk tank, which I hadn't been in a drunk tank in years and years and years, right? But I came to, and I was in this drunk tank, stripped down to my underwear, freezing cold, and I was like, kind of like, what am I doing? So I decided after, like, when I came home for the Christmas break, that wasn't where I needed to be. It wasn't good for my mind states. And, I reached out to my employer, and they were like on board 100%. They supported me. I let them know that like my drinking was becoming an issue again, and like it's sense of getting out of hand. And they were like, "Okay, we'll take some time here and, focus on yourself." And still got paid to kind of just regroup. And this was January, like over Christmas break. Obviously, I drank and used, and January 2nd was the last time I used cocaine, and January 5th was the last time I had a drink. So
That's great. You should be proud of yourself.
thank you. Feels good. I know it's not as far as long as I am before, but obviously I can't fast forward time, and it's just I got to redo one day at a time till I get back where I was before. So
And hopefully you surpass that and keep sober the rest of your life, you know?
I hope so.
So how do you keep yourself sober nowadays?
Um, the meetings, I had reconnected with actually someone that I'd been friends with on the streets in Calgary who'd gone to meetings. So I started going to there again, and um, the work obviously, working long 8 to 10 hours a day, Monday to Friday, sometimes Saturday. Like that's keeping me sober during the day, right? And the gym, actually, when I was off for that little bit of time, I got a gym membership, and I started going back to the gym, something that place that I hadn't been back to in like over 20 years, right? Like, so I've been going to the gym daily. Not today. Sundays are my rest day, but yeah, the gym's huge. You know, staying connected with my family. Um, yeah, right now, playoff hockey, as you can see, I got my Edmonton Oilers jersey on. So that's I don't go out to pubs to watch games. I paid for the Sportsnet subscription on my phone so I can just stay at home and stream it from the comfort of my bed, right? Just yeah, just trying to stay as connected as I can, right? So I'm not stuck in my own mind coming up with these self-sabotaging thoughts and behaviors that usually lead me to relapse.
Well, it's good that you got a plan in place and you're doing positive things.
Thank you.
So, getting towards the end, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about? Anything else you think we didn't cover? I mean, you had quite an interesting story and you're pretty detailed about it. I appreciate that.
Thank you. No, I guess I'd just like to tell anyone that's like still out there, humming and hawing or thinking about if they want to change their ways or stop using, or they tried before and they found that they couldn't, like, just trust the process, keep at it, right? Like my story, I had, like I said, many treatment centers, many relapses until it finally clicked, and something in me, like the desire to change, actually became first and foremost, right? So if you're on the fence about it, just trust the process, like love yourself, just tell yourself you're worth it, and don't be afraid to. Myself personally, I was kind of always the guy that was like afraid to ask for help, or thought I had to do everything on my own or keep my problems to myself, but like that's not the case, right? When you enter recovery, like there's so many people that are willing to help, like myself included, like all the people that helped me along the journey, right? So just like get at it, jump into it, and don't get discouraged if you might get a week or 2 weeks or you slip up again, right? Like it's not the end of the world. Just keep at it. So
That's great. Thank you for the advice. That's some meaningful stuff you got there.
thank you.
All right, so let's wrap this up. I really appreciate you doing the podcast. I want to say thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
No, it's been a pleasure. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, for sure I did. It was great. Thank you.
All right, awesome. All right, sit tight for me for a moment.
Sounds good,
And
brother. Thank
for
you.
Yeah, hang tight. Everyone watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also, subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can check us out on all social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, you name it, we're on it. I also suggest checking out our website, which is www.addicts-anonymous.com. There you'll find plenty of free resources as well as free literature. And lastly, Addicts Anonymous has a book coming out. It should be coming out soon. I had to push the date back a couple times, but I'll keep you as posted as far as that goes. So that's all we have for today. I really hope you enjoyed the podcast. And until next time.